Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael, of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, brothers and sisters, we do not intend for it to be long. Of the tribe of Dan. Nonetheless, brothers and sisters, we do intend to bring this out for edification purposes. We call this one here, brothers and sisters, Esarhaddon and Deuteronomy, or the matter with Esarhaddon and Deuteronomy. And the purpose, brothers and sisters, in this is because there are those who are saying that the prophecy we see in Deuteronomy 28 culminated and ended basically during the time of the Assyrian ruler Esarhaddon, which, brothers and sisters, we know to not be the case. So, without any further ado, brothers and sisters, what we're going to do, brothers and sisters, is get into prayer, and then from there, move on from that particular point. This is a follow-up of a prelude that we have done in the past, and brothers and sisters, we intend to sit there and bring this out to the masses of the people. Asking you all if you can hear me well, and if you're in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If you hear me well, and if you are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you for that. We're going to, brothers and sisters, start off as stated in prayer and move on from that. Thank you. Hallelujah. We ask you all to face toward Jerusalem. Eloheinu ve Elohe Abotenu. El Rakaman ve El Rakum wa Kanun. Terakim Aleinu. Al Hashabat Hazeh. Al Hayom Hazeh. Wagam Kain Tinahil. Wagam Kain Tilamed et Lishonenu. Watia be Bakwasha. Im Sifatenu. Wagam Kain Makshabotenu. Ya Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Titing Lanu Ruach Ne'ima. Kasher Atamake Haaretz. But Ruach Sa'ara. Yahweh Eloheinu ve Elohe Abotenu. Elohe Abraham, Elohe Yitzchak ve Elohe Yisrael. Al na tishkak kulanu ya. Al na tishkak ish wegam ken isha la akota. Wegam et habanim bahab no tiskor bebakusha. Tislak na ekatotenu. Wegam ken rakets na et. Me look like taint me look like kot nu. Yahweh Elohim. Hoshana wa not zel bebakusha et amka Israel me kal zarenu. Hallelujah. King of all that there is, cleanse us from our iniquities. Forgive us for our stiff-neckedness. Be with us, forget us not. Brother to brother, man to man, sister to sister, and even the children, remember, O Yah. King of all that there is, the rock of all salvations through every generation. We call upon you and you only, for you are the one who hear and can answer. For you hear what we care not to speak on or offline, O Yah. You hear what we care not to ever mention out of our lips and our thoughts. For you know the heart and you try the reins of it. And as you try the reins of us, O Yah, and even as you spoke, not by might nor by strength, but by your spirit, we ask you in the same manner, O Yah, if it be your will, to even when you bend Ephraim and fit the bow thereof with Judah, as you said through your prophet Zechariah, to even do it in loving kindness and compassion, O Yah. For all these things we ask in your name. Yah Eloheinu, hallelujah, amen. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. Brothers and sisters, we want to get into this presentation due to the fact that there are some who are saying, teaching, and maybe want to say proselytizing, if you will, the concept of saying that Israel's prophecy that we see in Deuteronomy 28 was culminated or ended in the timing of Esarhaddon of Assyria. I'm going to have to ask you all to get your phones, as we see here, your pens, your pads, your paper, as we get into this history. As I spoke with a brother just the other day, my friend and my brother Yirmiyahu Yisrael, the moderator on the platform, He said something that I didn't say to him when we were speaking, but something that resonated in my mind. Teach the law. If you're a Moreh and you know Torah means instruction or teaching, and if you're a teacher, your focus must be in the law, meaning in the law of the Most High God. And one of the things to point out how we can show that with a presentation as this, brothers and sisters, is because we know well and understand, brothers and sisters, elders, everyone inclusive, that due to not keeping the laws, the statutes, and the commandments of the Most High, is why Israel fell. But was Israel going to be judged even after, according to their ways and how they dealt with the law one with another? When the Most High gave his law, he gave it when they were free. It was meant to keep you as such. The law was made to be done perfectly in a free society. That is not to say that we are not to keep the law, statutes, and commandments in the captivity, brothers and sisters. So we want to point these things out for reference purposes. And again, something that my brother stated, nothing wrong with going over history, nothing wrong with going over linguistics. But if you have a whole set, this is what I gathered from what the brother Yirmiyahu and I was talking yesterday. If you have a whole presentation and there is nothing in there about the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High, or how to return closer to the Most High, you just did a college segment for pay, so to speak, because that's how they teach in colleges. I've taught in the college. You're not allowed to teach the Bible unless it's a, quote, religious school in that particular manner. So now that we have our own platforms, thanking the Creator, why not use that time to, one, extol him, and two, talk about what he wants us in order for us to be even extolled? What will make us great? What will make us Ha'elyon al-Ha'amim, the top of the nations, the Rosh, the head, and not the Zanab? There's nothing wrong with showing artifacts, because Psalm says, brothers and sisters, that the truth of Yah will come from the earth. And the more and more you study, the more and more you begin to sit there and see. Case in point, there's an Egyptologist, archaeologist in the 1990s or so. He went to Egypt to try to disprove the Exodus. He went to Egypt to try to show that the book of Exodus is a lie. His name was David Roll, or is David Roll. But guess what? When he went there, he found out there was even more and more evidence of the Exodus. More and more evidence of it. I cite David Roll in my book, Egypt Talk and Writing. So he went there with one agenda and found another situation. Glory be to the Creator of heaven and earth. Alan Gardiner, an Egyptologist, archaeologist, if you will, spoke about the Kabiru that you see of in the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Deuteronomy in the Torah teaches us that the Exodus and the children of Israel's story is known throughout the world. So why then will we not go to see what did the Egyptians say of such a matter? The Assyrians later on spoke about defeating the Egyptians, as do the Israelites. Spoke about defeating the Israelites, as do the Israelites. So if your story of losing collaborates with a story of the opponent winning, that leads very strong credence to the children of Israel story. Very strong credence. When you find Tiglath-Pileser speaking upon such, when you find later on, we're going to talk about Esarhaddon and how he mentioned, along with Ashur-bani-pal, two of the kings of Israel. And how before that, Sennacherib mentioned Hezekiah. Hezekiah, who was righteous. And then later on, as mentioned, Manasseh, his son, who was wicked. So there is a way to teach upon history, and knowing the laws of the Most High show how the hand of Yah moves in the earth. These are things we want to point out for reference purposes. See, unlike Manetho's record in Egypt, we don't know why the Hyksos came and did what they did. A smote of God blast came upon us, and we don't know why. No, the prophets of Israel is telling Israel, this is why it happened. So there won't be no mystery on why Assyria came, why Babylon came, why Media Persia, and why is it that Nehemiah, a great man, had to acquiesce to Cyrus and Darius? Why did Daniel, a prophet of Israel, had to acquiesce to Darius? These are your prophets acquiescing to the men of other nations, because Israel became the tail and not the head, as the law in Deuteronomy 28 talks about. So brothers and sisters, these are things we care to get into for edification purposes. And with that was the intro after the prayer. We're going to be reading first in Leviticus, the 26th chapter. And I'm going to ask if one of the brothers, Yirmiyahu, if he's present, can type in, not the whole verse, but just where we're going to be reading at. Leviticus 26, verse 39. Thank you. Shalom. Thank you for that, brothers and sisters. Thank you for that, family, immediate and extended. As I get my scriptures, we're going to be reading, as was stated in there, in Leviticus chapter 26, verse 39. And it reads as follows. Thank you for that, brothers and sisters, if we will. And they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemies' lands, and also in iniquity of their fathers shall they pine away with them. What does that mean? In your iniquities and in the iniquities of your fathers. So that means we being fathers today, God has set the tone so our children won't walk in our ways. For those who are into the hip-hop thing, if you will. The Wu-Tang Clan came out with a song. I think it's called A Better Tomorrow. That might be the name of the song. And the chorus of it, without using profanity, says, you can't smoke your life away, drink your life away, sleep your life away, because your seeds grow up the same way. And it's a message to bring home, brothers and sisters, to the people. So now, when you find brothers or sisters saying that you cannot keep the commandments while in captivity because the land is unclean, that'd be like saying a woman can't keep the commandments if she's unclean. And when a woman's going through her puberty and later on in life, she gets unclean generally every single month. There's a nocturnal emission, or a wet dream, if you will, that a boy goes through in puberty. He's unclean. Does that mean that he can't keep the law? No, what it means is the money looks good on Saturday, the Shabbat. She looks good, so you're willing to take her out. That's why men say you can't keep the Shabbat. You want someone to wine and dine you on Friday night and want that time to spend not trying to keep it sacred or holy. And that's why women say you can't keep the Shabbat. Money, carnal, with the opposite sex is the reason why Israelites today say you can't keep Shabbat. Because when we have a situation where you can bring in a note, brothers and sisters, if you want to go to there. When we are in a situation, brothers and sisters, where we can say, I don't want to work on the weekend, brothers and sisters, then why not do so? Why not let it be known if you want to go that far to say, it's my, quote, belief. Whether you say religious belief, we know it's not religion or whatever like that. But brothers and sisters, to sit there and not say anything and to just teach those that you can sit there and keep not keeping the laws, that's not nice. That's not good. And you have the mind of an oppressor. You have the mind of one that's going to sit there and say, just do that which is not correct, brothers and sisters. And we cannot continue and say in that particular manner. So brothers and sisters, we want to, while given this time and opportunity, to bring these kind of things out to the people. If it says your iniquities, that means you're being judged based on what you do while even in the land of your enemies. So don't let being in captivity / in the land of your enemies sit there and say, you know what, I can't do this and I can't do this because of that. That's not what the Most High God is stating. He stated to Cain, sin is at the door, and to you it's his desire, but you can rule over it. The Most High is telling you, sin is there, but you have the power over it. So if he's telling us that we can rule over it, then why do we allow it to rule over us? You ain't got to make a public prayer and saying, Yah, give me strength that I won't do this iniquity, as we get into the timing of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and so forth. And don't let people tell you, oh, you can't do that. Because the same ones telling you we can't keep holy days and we can't keep the commandments. You know what else they cannot tell you? It's something the Most High does tell you. I want to ask if the brother could type in where we're going to be reading. Deuteronomy 28, verse 2. Thank you. Going to be reading, brothers and sisters, in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and we're going to start in verse 2. Thank you for that, my brother, and helping in that particular case. And it reads as follows. Deuteronomy 28, verse 2. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. No, if you shall hearken to the word of the person in the camp. This says, if thou shalt hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God. No, if you read what somebody's telling you on fake book that you ain't got to keep the commandments of the Most High God. This says, and all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee. Why is it that the people who teach we cannot keep the commandments cannot state how they're going to bless you? Can you, not being funny, pay my bills? Can you sit there and soften the heart of my enemies to want to pay me for a time taken off on Yom Kippur when I have no sick days, giving glory to the Most High? Taking off for Yom Kippur while not having no sick days, the job is still saying, put that as a PTO. Can these people who are teaching you to not keep the commandments of the Most High bless one like I seen just happen in my life before the Most High God? Of course they cannot. You understand? Can these people who are saying to you and I to not keep the commandments of the Most High God, are they able to sit there and say, I'm going to sit there and be a good role model for your kid? I want to be your child's godfather. Are they saying that? No. Are they saying their wife can be a person to teach my daughter certain things? No. Because you know what happens? In most cases, and it's not trying to be funny, it's the single committee that goes around teaching you can't keep the commandments. Because when you're in a relationship, man and a woman, woman and a man, there's certain laws that you got to keep. But if you're teaching you ain't got to keep laws, then what's the point in loving your neighbor as yourself? That's one less neighbor that you got to know to love if you choose to be single. So brothers and sisters, let's continue in Deuteronomy 28. Blessed shalt thou be in a city, and blessed shalt thou be in a field. Brothers and sisters, whether you're in a city, the Ir, or if you're in a field, the Sade, whether you're in Brooklyn, New York, in the city, the concrete jungle, or whether you're not, or whether or not you are in, say, just throwing it out there, Chester, South Carolina, which is very country. Blessed shalt thou be in a city, and blessed shalt thou be in a field. But the people who are telling you and I that we can't keep the commandments don't understand what Leviticus 26:39 is talking about. Your iniquities and iniquities of your forefathers. How can you say to not keep the commandments because of where you are while you're still being judged for what you're doing regardless of your location? I'll tell you why. It's because that overtime looks good. Next, let's go into, brothers and sisters, the book of, and I'm going to ask the brother to type it in where we're going to be reading. Thank you for that, Aki. We're going to be in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 8, verse 44. 1 Kings, chapter 8, verse 44, brothers and sisters, because we know we're approaching the timing of Yom Kippur, so we want to sit there and talk, say, about certain things before we get into that particular matter in said fashion. All right? We are in the book of Kings, chapter 8, verse 44. Thank you for that, brothers and sisters. And it says the following. And this is part of Solomon's prayer. If thy people go out to battle against their enemy, whithersoever thou shalt send them, and shalt pray unto Yah toward the city that thou hast chosen, and toward the house that I have built for your name, then hear thou in heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. If your people go out to battle against their enemy. So that means Israel always going to have enemies. And they pray to the Most High toward the city which was chosen, which is Jerusalem. That's why we pray toward the direction of Jerusalem. It goes on to say in verse 46, if they sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not, and thou be angry with them and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captives unto the land of the enemy, far or near. Where we carry captives? Far to the land of our enemies. We're talking over 3,000 miles in the Atlantic slave trade. The average shipping of our ancestors, did you know, was a matter of certainly over 2 months? Do you know what happens, not being disrespectful, with women every month? You know they kept the woman on the top part of the slave ship, right? You do know that, right? Where do you think her menses went if she's on the top part of the slave ship? Have you ever seen an uncleanness of a woman? And I'm sure there may be females in here. I am not trying to offend. I have a lady, I have a daughter, I have sisters, I had a mom. Anyone who hears me speak, I'm always talking about my mother. Always. May she rest in peace. And she taught me the laws of Leviticus. I remember when, not to be disrespectful, but talking real life, when my imam will be going through her cycle, or my sister, and there's one toilet, it says wherever she sit becomes unclean. You're going to find your own way to sit. I'm not squatting. You will do it, son. I remember that as a child, to use the bathroom, not to get too sidetracked or sound nasty. But brothers and sisters, once it comes down into this particular matter, if we will, brothers and sisters, what do we care and what do we want to point out for reference purposes is this, as we continue in this manner, right? In the book of Kings, whether they carried them captive far or near. So whether or not Cushan Rishatayim was taking Israelites, or the Philistines raided Israelites, which is near to where they was at, Cushan Rishatayim of Midian, if I remember correctly, right? Or a whole group of people from Portugal as far as Italy, because Genoa and places such as that profited off of the Atlantic slave trade, for those who know the history of it, and brought you all the way after their neighbors, the Greeks and Romans, and chased you to African places, as we're going over in the presentation done with me and a brother, Saw Yehu, Shalom, Moray, if you're live in the presentation. So once all of that's happened, and Solomon is saying here, it says what? If they sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not, and thou be angry with them and deliver them to their enemy, and so that they carry them captives into the land of the enemy, far or near. If Israel's delivered to the hand of the enemy, there is no way, shape, form, and fashion, even the Romans knew that. We cannot defeat the Perigini. We cannot defeat the Ayuda. Ayuda is the Latin form of Judah, or Yahuda in Hebrew. The Perigini is the byword that they call the Israelites. So what they did when you read about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD is that the Romans digged into the ground, made a tunnel, and came up underneath it. They was not penetrating them sons of Levi and Judah. Since the time of Nero of Rome, even pointed out in history, the Israelites, when they had no weapons, went to their knuckles. The knuckle game, that is to say their fist, that they was using against the Romans was no joke. Even white historians talk about that kind of thing. So this is not to be racial, just want to point this out for reference purposes. In the nutshell, they were not defeated lightly. In order for us to have fallen, the Most High gave Israel over to their enemies. So we want to point that out for reference purposes. All right? So let's continue in this particular manner, if we will. Yet if they shall bethink themselves in a land whither they would carry captives. You're not bethinking yourself. We are reading in 1 Kings 8, verse 47 for those who joined on. Thank you for that. You're not bethinking yourself if you're saying, hey, we don't have to keep the commandments. Party on out here. You have no time for sacredness. No time for that which is holy and right. When you find Israelites saying Shabbat is only in a day, we discussed that. When you find Israelites saying the Shabbat rotates, we talked about that. When you find people saying Yom Kippur is this day, oh no, it's not this day, it's this day. One thing we all can say is that none of us are saying that you can't keep the commandments of the Most High. See, in the day when we call, we want Yah to be there for us. And if you don't think that bethinking yourself means that we're going to go through a process of agreeing and disagreeing on certain things, one thing we can walk hand in hand and agree about is keeping the Lord's statutes, commandments of the Most High God, loving your neighbor as yourself. Implication that too, you must love yourself. So brothers and sisters, the far-flung community teaching that we cannot keep the commandments, that we should not keep the commandments, you're off. You're way off. You understand? So brothers and sisters, if I can be heard and people are in good spirits, please type in, I'm asking the number 4. If I can be heard well and people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. All right? Yet if they shall bethink themselves in the land where they will carry captives and repent and make supplication unto thee in the land of them that carried them captives, saying, we have sinned, we have done perversely, we have committed wickedness, and so return unto thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their enemies, was led them away captive. So, brothers and sisters, if it's telling you to return in Solomon's prayer, what's so hard to understand? The solution and the answer is right there. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. And I'm going to ask if the brothers there, Yirmiyahu, you can type in where we're going to be reading. We're going to now go to 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 1. 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 1. And it reads as follows. And it came to pass when Solomon had finished the building of the house of Yah and the king's house, and all of Solomon's desire, which he was pleased to do, that Yah appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared unto him in Gibeon. And Yah said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house which thou hast built, to put my name there forever, and my eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually. So, brothers and sisters, what are we pointing out? The Most High is telling Solomon he heard his prayer. So why do we think that the one who fills heaven and earth doesn't hear our prayers? The silent ones, the quiet ones, and the loud ones. What will make us think that the Most High does not hear us? Let me give an example of what I mean in this particular case. Brothers and sisters, if we will, right? Sarah was Abram's wife. And they were given a message saying that at a certain time, they will have a child. And she laughed. But when she laughed, she was behind the wall inside of a house. Right? So when she did come out, the messenger, Malach, angel, if you will, of the Most High, said, this child that you're going to have, you shall name him Yitzchak, meaning laughter, or transliterated as Isaac, translation being laughter. And she said, I did not laugh. And the messenger or the Malach of the Most High said, indeed, do have laughed. See, she didn't expect behind the wall. This is no knock on Ima Sarai. You understand? She did not expect behind the wall to be thought of as one laughing of the messenger of the Most High's words. It says she said that because she was afraid. So behind the wall, the Most High still sees what you're doing and what you're thinking and what you're saying. So when you may say Abraham may have not thought that of his wife, she probably was surprised that she even did laugh, but said, no, I did not laugh. And yes, you did laugh. This conversation is over. You did laugh. You understand? And the boy that she had, who grew to be a great man, Yitzchak, he dealt with that name in love and respect because of a situation that happened. So what do we want to point out in that particular case, if we will, brothers and sisters, is this. Never, ever think the Most High doesn't know. And this is not to sound racial, but Israelites been saying the European Jews, the Khazars, they've been wearing our coat. They ain't the real Jews. And I agree, they're not. But Israel, for the lack of a better term, right? If the Most High God woke up the so-called black man to his truth about being who he is, what makes our people think that we can run game on each other and everything be all right? If the Most High woke us up from amnesia, illiteracy, superstition, stupidity, idolatry, wickedness, to understand the true path of righteousness, what makes us think that we now can run game on each other while the Most High, by us, we are saying the Most High didn't allow the nation to run game on us? What makes us think we can wear a coat that's not properly ours while we're saying, thank you for giving us our coat back, oh yeah? What are we doing? You have insulted your own intelligence in that case, brothers and sisters. That's not good. So, brothers and sisters, we want to sit there and know we cannot disrespect and play each other and think everything's going to be all right. Because the Most High didn't allow the nation to play us and everything was all right. Before the 50-year anniversary of them being in the land of Israel, you had a congregation already saying we are the true Israelites. This goes back to Rabbi Ford, B'nai Abraham in New York, and before that, Prophet Cherry in Tennessee, as we going over before. And that was back in the 1890s. Before we start talking about camps left and right, because believe it or not, there's more camps in Chicago than New York. A lot of people, regardless of camp, whether they're from 1 West, 125th Street, or Tanakh base, or other Israelite understandings and so forth, there are more camps for everybody talking about New York City in Chicago and Ohio than the entire state of New York. If you want to put it in terms like that. The Midwest, this knowledge is vast. Brothers and sisters, you understand. My history teacher was T. Simeon. He came from Chicago. His teacher came out of Ohio. He being a person, may they both rest in peace, named Nasi Yaakov, who started the congregation of B'nai Zakim. My first Israelite teacher, Mora Yosef, came out of the West Indies, from St. Thomas, from the Virgin Islands, brothers and sisters. So again, stop that disrespect of I'm an American, you're West Indian, when in actuality, the West Indies is part of North America. Jamaica, Trinidad is part of the North American continent, just as much as Madagascar is part of the African continent. So I just want to point that out for reference purposes, if we will. All right. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, maker of heaven and earth. Just wanted to go over that for reference purposes. And we're going to be, I don't know if everyone has a copy of it, but if you have your phone or computer, so you can look it up as we read it. I'm going to be reading, I want to show on the camera, out of this book here. This book here was bought for me by my lady Sarai. Much respect to the lady in my life. The Apocrypha. We're going to be reading in Ecclesiasticus, brothers and sisters. Chapter 28. We're not going to read the whole thing of it, but we're going to be reading in that particular portion. Ecclesiasticus chapter 28 says, he that revenges shall find vengeance from Yah, and he will surely keep his sins in remembrance. Forgive thy neighbor the hurt that he hath done unto thee, so that also your sins shall be forgiven when you pray. You cannot hold grudge against your brother and sister and then go before the Most High and say, forgive me, because the Most High at the prayer book says, if the Most High were to mark iniquity, me, Ya'amod, who shall stand? If the Most High were to mark iniquity, who's going to stand? How many people here have not done anything worthy of death? And just in case you was wondering, disrespecting your parents is a death penalty in Israel. You do know that, right? If your parent says go to school and you cut class in Israelite culture, that is a death penalty. You have dishonored or set light by father and mother. That is what you read of in Deuteronomy 27. That is what you read of in Ezekiel 22. Brothers and sisters, in getting into this particular matter, if we will, it goes on to say this, right? One man beareth hatred against another, and does he seek pardon from the Most High? There's anything that the Most High can say, you know what? I didn't like what you did. That's it. So if we don't want Yah to do that with us, then we don't need to do that with each other. Our elders are leaving this earth. Our teachers are leaving this earth. I have more teachers, if I were to do the roll call, who are now in the earth after passing away, than I got teachers that are among us. More of my teachers have left this earth, certainly my Hebrew teachers, no knock on Hebrew, than those who are still among us. So what legacy do we want to sit there and leave behind? You understand? What do we want to sit there and have left as a memory, brothers and sisters? Let's go on, if we will, family. He showeth no mercy to a man which is like himself, and does he ask for forgiveness for his own sins? We're going to stop there, Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, chapter 28, verses 1 through 4. A man like unto you, you can't forgive, knowing that there is no list of sins that you can say, I'll never do this and I'll never do that. And if you can have a list of sins and you can't check them all, that you will do none of them, then you need to have, you, I, all of us included, need to have a heart to forgive your brother and your sister. And true forgiveness also comes with forgetting. Forget the wrong that they did. Don't remember it. Don't say, like the nations then said and taught us, well, I'm going to forgive but not forget. You stay right there if you want to, while we hope the Most High cast our sins into the bottomless pit to remain there forevermore. We hope the Most High forgives and forget the iniquities, but we tell one another, I'm going to remember what you did. But we hope the Most High don't remember what we did. Brothers and sisters, I would like to, if I may, and taking the time out with this, right? I want to show something for reference purposes. And it gets into a little matter of history, if we will, right? But I would like to show, this is kind of not sidetracked, but not on the platform discussion that we were going to be talking about with Assyria, if we will, right? And this is what I want to talk about, if we will, in this particular case. All right. And that is this, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and Maker of heaven and earth. I want to show this book here, if we will. This book here is called The Complete Royal Families of Ancient Egypt. Now, let's look at this. The Most High told us in the Torah to not abhor an Egyptian, right? Yes. Okay. So let's look, brothers and sisters, and remember what the book of Exodus says. It says in the book of Exodus that Israel was made to work in a field. And Exodus 5 talks about the straw to make brick. Now, if a brother's findings is right, the mud brick pyramids were built by the Israelites. Josephus gets into that particular matter, saying Israelites built pyramids. This is one of the mud brick pyramids built during what is referred to as the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. You don't find it like this in the Old Kingdom or the New. You find it like that in the Middle Kingdom, if we will. All right. I'm being told no sound. Okay, so I'm being told that there is sound. All right, so what I'm going to do is, if I can be heard, can I get a 4 in that particular case, brothers and sisters? All right, thank you for that, because I want to make sure, this is why I ask it so often, if people in good spirits and if they can hear me well, type in the number 4, and I'm asking that now. In that particular case, thank you so much for that, family. All right. So let's look. Okay, sound came back. Thank you. So let's look at this, right? I don't know the last thing you heard me say. This book here is called The Complete Royal Families of Ancient Egypt. And in Exodus chapter 1 and in Exodus chapter 5, right, it talks about Israel dealing with bricks and straw for bricks. And I was trying to point out, brothers and sisters, that this here is one of the mud brick pyramids that would have been, yes, indeedly built by the Israelites during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. You don't find that in the Old Kingdom. You don't find that in the Middle Kingdom. You don't find that in the Late Kingdom. You find that, in brothers and sisters, in the Middle Kingdom. So remember, the Torah teaches us not to a poor Egyptian, brothers and sisters, in that particular case. Let's look at this, brothers and sisters. And this is the complete royal families of ancient Egypt, right? And what do we see there? Dynasty 13. And what do we want to point out, brothers and sisters, in that particular case? You have, if we will, where the pen is showing Neferhotep. Neferhotep was one of the kings of Dynasty 13. And then we see Ha'ankef, an Egyptian son of Neferhotep, his firstborn. Now, everybody who knows anything about this royalty, your firstborn is supposed to take your place. But the next pharaoh we see there is Sihathor, not Ha'ankef, the son of Neferhotep. When you look at the complete royal families of Egypt, do you know why? Because the Most High put him to death. That's why the brother of the Pharaoh had to ascend to take the throne, because his son could not do it. When you read about the situation going on inside of Egypt's Middle Kingdom in Dynasty 13, collaborating, say, with the history of such, you'll begin to learn, see, know, and understand what was going on. And in that particular case, brothers and sisters, the Most High brought it to their heads. That's why you find in Dynasty 13 of Egypt, the son of Neferhotep not having that. That's why when you read secular inside of Egyptian records, the army that Neferhotep III after him talked about says our army's depleted. Of course. Remember, he took the best soldiers that he could get, and they died. So now the Amalekites that we see in Exodus chapter 17, later on, after Dynasty 13 we just talked about, become the Tanis Hyksos that you see in Dynasty 15. The Most High, dealing with the plagues that came upon Egypt, caused that society to fall and made another people be able to come into rule. And because you lost your economy, that is to say, the children of Israel as your slaves, you was a weakened to be able to have anybody else just come in that particular case. So, brothers and sisters, these are things we want to bring out and talk upon for edification purposes. I just wanted to show that family tree thing from this book here that we just talked about. So the Hyksos that everyone always talks about were the people who had ruled after the Israelites left. The people that Joshua fought in Rephidim were the same as the Tanis Hyksos that you see in history. They first came against Israel in Exodus 17, and then they wound up going into Egypt and having taken over the Egyptian economy in that particular case. See, how does that in the part tie in? You ain't got to sit there and try to get more vengeance when the Most High said, hate not an Egyptian in your heart. Yah took care of it. You don't have to sit back, I'm going to get, and it's going to be me, and I'm going to, no. Yah is saying he dealt with the matter. Yah fixed the situation. You should not add to the word, nor take away from the word of the Most High. Word in Hebrew, anybody can type it into the chat. How do you say word in Hebrew? In Hebrew is, how do you say word in Hebrew, brothers and sisters? All right, anybody could type that into the chat, whether in English or in Hebrew lettering, I'm saying, is my question upon that matter. If we read in Deuteronomy to not add to nor take away from the word of the Most High, that we might keep his commandment, thank you for that, my brother. The word daber or dabar means word. You know what else that word dabar means? Sing. So the things of the Most High, we cannot add to it. So if the Most High brought down the Egyptians from the timing of what they refer to now in history as the Middle Kingdom, what place do we have as an Israelite to scorn an Egyptian? You don't got that place. Yah took care of the situation. If you see that you had a problem and the Most High gave you the remedy and it showed you that he fixed the situation, just fall back and say Todah Yah. Don't sit there and say, yeah. See, that's why Obadiah said Edom shall be destroyed to the last man. Because when Israel was losing to the Babylonians, the Most High never sent Esau in because you broke the brotherly covenant. Even when the Most High was upset with Israel and Judah, he never commissioned as a nation the Edomites to go and attack because that's still your brother. He's going to send someone else called Babylon. So when Edom was there cutting off those that escaped in the 6th century BCE, which we're going to get into in this presentation, you should have never did that. That was between, on a human level, Israel and Babylon, and on the deeper level, the Most High using Babylon against Israel. So if the Most High used his plagues against Egypt, it was not the place of the Israelites to sit there and say, we're going to add more. Nope, stop. Know where you know your place. Don't sit there and go into the land of Edom where Mount Hor is, where the Horites were, O Yisrael, because the Most High gave that to them. He's giving you the land of Canaan. Know where your portion is before the Most High God. So these are things before we get into this history lesson to show how the law, the ways of the Most High collaborate in such, and getting into this particular matter. So without any further ado, brothers and sisters, in getting into this, we hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. We ask you again to get your pens, your pad, your paper, and I don't know if this is going to be a long presentation. I understand that YouTube gives you 8 hours. I don't intend for it to be 8 hours. But brothers and sisters, it appears that it might go into the ending of the Shabbat, with the time here being 5:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The sun is down, say 7:15 for sure. We have a good amount of information to go over. All right? For those who are in the chat, it's appreciated. For those who are supporting, it is appreciated, brothers and sisters. And yes, thank you for that, my brother. Deuteronomy chapter 23. Yeah, let's read that. Thank you for that, for typing that in, Aki. Let's read that, right? Deuteronomy 23, verse 7 and 8, to let the book speak. Thank you for that, for typing that in, Aki. It says this: Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because you is a stranger in his land. You know, sadly, and I say no disrespect to any Israelite, that Edomite was supposed to be Aramean. That the Aleph, the Dalet, and the Mem, that Dalet next to the Aleph and before the Mem is supposed to be a ratio. Instead of Edom, it's supposed to say Aram. No, it's not. It means just Edom. Aram, yeah, is our brother by a far shot, but Edom is the national brother of Israel through the seed of the twins. But because, no disrespect, you think Edom is the white man, and you want to, quote, hate the white man, not realizing, like Solomon said, Israel was given to the hand of their enemies. Because remember, the Romans were white. Those people who burnt the temple that Titus and all of them talk about, Titus and Domitian and their father Vespasian and Pompey, and after all of them, Hadrian, those were Europeans. Those are white men. You understand? The only way they came and went against us is because we, as a people, fell. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, there's no way that the Portuguese and the English and the Swedes and the British, being the English as in the British, that gets into another matter where Barit, Ish, and them being Esau in part, because English and British is kind of different. Barit means covenant, Ish means man, which takes you back to some of the 13 families of the United States. Shh, Let's not go too far from the history lesson, because that'll get you talking about the, you know, the ILLUMNIAT people called the Illuminati. So let's not go that far. Not trying to muzzle the lesson, but let's just get into what we're talking about in this particular case here. Edom here is not a mistranslation. It's supposed to be Edom. Edom is not the white man. We want to point that out. The Edomites went over into Europe, does not sit there mixing it with Japheth and so forth. But all the white people that you see is not the children of Esau. Just like everybody in West Africa is not an Israelite. Hebrewisms of West Africa even points that out. Israel migrated where other people looking like them in complexion were. Edom himself not even caring where he put his seed at. He don't care where he at on earth. You understand? So we want to point that out. You're teaching that the white man is Edom, and you want to hate the white man as if this herpes carrying, hunchback, can't sit there and live in a society for 300 years without going from smallpox to HIV as a problem, showing the plagues is still in the society. From smallpox to HIV, in the last 300 years, this society has never truly had peace. You always have some kind of sickness. In that particular case, brothers and sisters. So why are we hating on that when you can sit there and see with your quote third eye that the Most High is plaguing them? You don't have the right to say, I'm going to let it go. You see, y'all taking care of it. Don't try to add on to that. Let us learn, and I say this in no dishonor. Let us learn from my ancestor Jacob. The day breaketh, I must go. And you're going to keep fighting. When there's a beginning of something, there's an end of something. So let us learn from that, brothers and sisters. So brothers and sisters, in getting into this particular matter and giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth, what do we want to point out for reference purposes, if we will? I want to take out the time to say Todah Yah, because I was frustrated, angry, if you will, disenchanted. I don't even like that word because we're not supposed to deal with enchantments. But I was lacking encouragement, and we're told to be courageous about teaching. I'm gonna stop teaching because every time I go online, the audio was messed up, and my lady was tagging over 70-something people just to have to discontinue that video. If you remember, brother Saul Yehu, when we first was going to do the thing from Kemet to Compton, part 2, we had to shut that down. I was so saddened by that. Because people like, okay, let's do it. And like, but something came upon me from Yah in wisdom. If your computer audio is not working the best for you to talk into it, and you can invite people into the StreamYard, then invite yourself. So that's what I did. What I do now is I use my phone to do the audio, and then I use the computer to do the video, and it works out perfect and good ever since. See? In quietness and stillness, you'll find your God. And what do we ask of the Most? That's in Isaiah. And what do we ask of the Most High God? Like the priestly blessing. May he give you shalom. When we greet, we don't greet and say Melchama. We greet and say shalom. So we want to point that out, brothers and sisters, for reference purposes. All right? So the audio is sounding better. The presentation is good. The Wi-Fi is good. And there are other things that discuss business that I don't want to talk about on the Shabbat, but I must say, Todah Yah. We cannot forget that. I'm not going to get too personal, even after Shabbat, about what I'm saying Todah Yah for. But Yah hears. I just went through it. And as it says, Yah answered me with a great enlargement. I will never be atheist. Do you know atheist doesn't go to any of the languages of Shem or Ham? Now, there's some Shemitic and Hamitic nations that do idolatry, which is just dumb. But atheists only goes back to Japhetic languages. Did you know, correct me if I'm wrong, that in Genesis, it's only Japhet that's called Goyim? Did you know that? That Ham and Shem is called Am, meaning people. Now, Goy doesn't mean something a heathen or wicked or something, but there's something about Japhet that Genesis, for those who are into the languages, is pointing out that you're different than Shem and Ham. And even the definition of Japhet is not from Yafa or Yapa or Yape, meaning pretty or beautiful, but rather from the word pata, meaning to deceive, to entice. That's what Japhet means. Kam means hot, Shem means fame, and Yaphet means entice or deceive. Yeah. But let's get back, brothers and sisters, into this particular presentation, if we will, and giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. Again, what kind of moray are you? There's the moray, that's the teacher Proverbs talks about. I didn't mention it, sorry about that. But the brother Saw Yehu pointed out about the stubborn and rebellious son. You know, that's a moray too. So there's two different kinds of moray in Israel. There's the moray that's the teacher, and then there's the moray that's the stubborn and rebellious child. Oh, the Bible, it talks about killing kids. Brothers and sisters, and this is no disrespect, the Most High takes them from the grave to the hoary head. Did you know that Jeroboam's son was taken by the Most High when he was a child? It's not because of Jeroboam's son's wickedness. I don't want to see what I'm about to do to your father as a man, because I'm about to shut the kingdom down that's headed by your father. So let me take your son, the righteous taken away. No one's considering that they say for the evil to come. If you read and take what you read in the book of Joshua, Methuselah died right before the flood. I don't want you to see what's about to happen, so I'm going to take you where you're being taken to, somewhere. Because if the Torah in Leviticus and the Torah in Deuteronomy is saying do not do Yid Oni, sorcery. Yid Oni, don't do that. If it's telling you not to do Mekwawe Ha-Metim, which means what in today's term? Necromancy. Necro from the Latin word for dead. As much as I talk about my moms, I'm not going to sit there and say, Mommy, I miss you. Let me sit there. No. Because when she was alive, if I woke her up for something, it better be important. Otherwise, the next one laying down will be you. Smack. Don't wake me up for something stupid when I'm in my rest. So no, as much as I miss my mother, and I give the Most High respect for giving me a lady, not to get too personal, in my life, Sarai, who at times when off camera, I may cry or mourn and miss my mom. She's there to comfort me. I respect my lady in that manner. Not sounding less than a man. David cried. Let's not even sit there and try to play, yo, we're humans. You understand? That's why I say she being in my life is like Rebecca and Isaac's life, because the Tanakh tells you, Yirmiyahu, can you type that in? The Tanakh tells you, Genesis chapter 24, verse 67, if you will. Genesis 24, verse 67, and we're going to get into the lesson, brothers and sisters. It says this. Yes, Rivka, one of the best women in the Tanakh. And here's what we read in Genesis chapter 24, verse 67. And it says this, brothers and sisters. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Every woman can't do that. He brought her into his mother's tent. She became his wife. He took her. We know what that means. And he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Not every woman has that power, if you will. Some may not know the matter of strong and strength. Use your strength, sisters, not being strong. There's a difference. Strength is what you can share to others. Being strong, you can still be wrong. But in strength, like Proverbs 31 talks about, is different. So there's a difference we're trying to point out between listening and hearing, and there's a difference between strong and strength. That doesn't mean to not be strong. That doesn't mean not to be strong and courageous, as we are pointing out. You understand? But strength is definitely not a bad thing. Yes, filling a void. Every woman can't do that. So when the Most High blesses you with that, appreciate it. Don't treat it like it's nothing. Don't treat it like it's insignificant. Brothers, I was raised in Israel since I was a baby, and I was. You know how many men in Israel I seen mess up with their wives? Oh, let's talk, family. And it's not, I'm not going to say nobody's names. You know how many men in Israel messed up with their wives? Having the slave master mentality. Her duty is to serve the Most High and her husband. And what does he do? Where is his mind at as the groom? Because Proverbs 31, about the Proverbs woman, it says her husband praises her. But let these same kind of men, no disrespect, counsel you, and you'll be single as they are. And happy as such. When the Most High said, it's not good for a man to be alone. So how can he be good alone? And how can she, who was made to be his helpmate, be good being alone, when part of the reason why you was made was so I won't be alone? I got family who think I don't need no man. Yes, you do. If you ain't need a man, you wouldn't say it. Don't sit there, sisters, and listen to the single committee of ladies. Brothers, don't make the mistake. Oh, Rehoboam did. I'm going to be like this. Because see, Rehoboam's friends, we're going to do a presentation about Rehoboam and his friends one day. Those so-called friends were haters. Because the true friend is not going to tell you to do something wrong. They was hating maybe because Rehoboam had a throne and they didn't. So what you tell the people is you're going to be harder on them than Solomon was. Yeah. Solomon loved foreign women in 1 Kings chapter 11. And in 1 Kings chapter 12, Israel is saying he treated them incorrectly. We spoke last night about the priest and his wife. It got to be a woman of your own people. You cannot sit there and be with those that are not of your own people while staying on stage. You got a heart for your people. Solomon loved Edomite women, Philistine women, Moabite women, all of these kind of things that was not applicable to being a ruler of your people. And he oppressed his people. Maybe those women were in his ear. You understand? So these are things, brothers and sisters, we want to point out. Yes, you are what your father is. Yes, Rehoboam's mother was an Ammonite. And yes, he was still an Israelite. But we all know what Tobit talks about dealing with women that is not of your own people, brothers. What's the point in having women of your own people? Because we will frown on our sisters dealing with men that are not of our own. And anyone would, black, white, or indifferent. Because when I saw my little princess, I didn't ever think, nor do I want, nor will it happen, of someone of another nation being my son-in-law. Nor was I a said black man ever to be thought of when he's holding his child in his arms to be the son-in-law of a white man. It just is what it is. It's not trying to be racial. It just is what it is. All nations will serve the Most High. That doesn't mean that you guys sit there and mix your seed and weaken your seed line. Each nation has their own angel. The one who stands for Yisrael is Mikael. So if you're doing certain things on earth, what do you think it might affect other things? You don't want to be cut off, O house of Israel. Spiritually, physically, or mentally. You understand? So brothers and sisters, These are things we want to point out for reference purposes. Without any further ado, brothers and sisters, let us get into the presentation. Due to the fact that some people are saying, well, you know, when you get down into it, Esarhaddon of Assyria is when Deuteronomy 28 came to pass and ended. So we're going to ask you to get your pens, your pads, and your paper and to take notes. All right? For reference and edification purposes. We'll be using this book here, the scriptures, mainly and only the Old Testament. Wanted to point that out, brothers and sisters. We're going to be using this book here, brothers and sisters, the Ancient Near Eastern Texts and Pictures, Volume 2. We'll be using this book, brothers and sisters. We'll be using, brothers and sisters, this book here, and I have to ask you, please pardon the cover. You can laugh if you want. All right, this is what happens when you don't take care of your books. Well, when you study, that happens. No, when you don't put a cover on your books and you sit there and deal with it like a rag doll, making notes and putting it here and there in your bag and a cover ripoff is the result. It has nothing to do with studying much. It comes from a lack of taking care of your property. But nonetheless, this is the book that I have, and it is Biblical Sources for Hebrew and Jewish History. We're going to be using this book as well as this one here. This is the Ancient Near East and Texts and Pictures, Volume 1. So we're going to be using the Bible, as we have been citing, and secular sources for reference purposes. And brothers and sisters, we want to sit there, and no disrespect intended, get into this, if we will, right? Because we're going to be using, if we will, brothers and sisters, all right, pardon the matter of the crossed out lines. We're going to be using this as well. This is the brother's notes. So we'll be using notes that the brothers accumulated over some time in the presentation and using these books as sources. So let us get into this. So the brother Jay Frennan said, looks like your books, brother, looks like this book that may have had for X amount of time, and oh, I'm tired, I'm just going to put it somewhere, and then the cover rips off. I remember so much so, like the Apocrypha I bought, you don't want to see my other Apocrypha. It's up on the shelf. That has absolutely no cover on it. So I'm thankful for my lady buying me this, a better, sturdier version. Because if you are in a debate, if you do that, and if you are in a discussion, you don't want to pull out a book that is torn like that. That's just a matter of presentation. Just like you don't want to go online showing yourself with a torn garment or so forth, or the audio or the video not sounding right. Those kind of things, presentation is important. So I don't mind constructive criticism, put me on to it. All right, let's look, brothers and sisters, and get into this matter, if we will. Pulling this up, if we will, we're going to start, brothers and sisters, in the slideshow from the beginning here. All right, and giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, Maker of heaven and earth. I want to state why I prefer to not show me on the camera, because I'd rather, brothers and sisters, it be a thing where the family sees, if we will, the presentation more than me. Don't focus on me. I'm not that important. Focus on the presentation. I'm able to see the comments, brothers and sisters, so let me know what it is. Thank you for participating and helping the presentation. Giving honor to the Creator of heaven and earth. This presentation is brought to you all from Danite Publications. Next slide. The Assyrians, which were of importance to the Israelites, are as follows. Shalmaneser III, Adad Nerari, Tiglath-Pileser III, Shalmaneser V, Sargon II, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, Ashurbanipal II. Now, brothers and sisters, this gentleman right here, right? Esarhaddon is what some people want to tell us is when the prophecies we see in Deuteronomy 28 come to pass. And we want to point out, brothers and sisters, that that is not where it started nor ended. So Shalmaneser III, you may have seen Jehu bow down to him inside of the matter of ancient Assyria, right? Adad-Nirari mentioned Jehoash of Israel in his records. Tiglath-Pileser III captured the northern kingdom of Israel. So, brothers and sisters, these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to point out and to bring out for edification purposes. I would like to, as we were talking about earlier, right? I would like to get into, and I'm going to show on the camera, right? This book right here. All right, the Ancient Near East in Text and Pictures. And we're going to be reading, brothers and sisters, on page, for those who do even have it, 193. Tiglath-Pileser campaigns against Syria and Palestine. It goes on to say, Metini of Ashkelon, Jehoaz of Judah, Kus Malku of Edom, Hano of Gaza, consisting of gold, silver, tin, iron. He goes on to say, I received tribute from Rezon of Damascus, Menachem of Samaria, Hiram of Tyre, Sabit-Tabili of Byblos. He continues to go on to say, brothers and sisters, as for Menachem, I overthrew him like a snowstorm, and he fled like a bird alone, and bowed to my feet. I received from him, it says, pardon, I returned him to his place, and imposed tribute upon him, to wit, gold, silver, and linen trimmings, with multicolored trimmings, great. What do we want to point out in two things? Linen and multicolored matters. Leviticus talks about, no, pardon me, Ezekiel talks about the priest wearing linen garments, if we will. So that's something we care to bring out and point out for reference purposes. It goes on to say, this is what Tiglath-Pileser said. I received from him, Israel, literally Omri land, Beit Humriah, all the inhabitants and their possessions I led to Assyria. They overthrew their king Pekah, and I placed Hosea as king over them. I received from them talents of gold, talents of silver, and brought them to Assyria. We see, brothers and sisters, in this matter as well. Sargon II. He was the successor of Shalmaneser V. And what does these people say concerning the Israelites? I besieged and conquered Samaria and led away as booty, that's to say the captivity, over 27,000 inhabitants of it. I formed from them into a contingent of 50 chariots and made remaining inhabitants assume their social positions. I installed them an officer of mine and imposed upon them the tribute of former kings. Brothers and sisters, if you have the Assyrians talking, brothers and sisters, about the Israelites, and we can go in our own time in the book of Kings and see it, what is so hard to understand? Let's continue, brothers and sisters, in this particular matter. Sennacherib, he goes on to say this. As for Hezekiah of Judah, he did not submit to my yoke. I laid siege to 46 of his strong cities, walled forth into the countless small villages in their vicinity, and conquered them by means of well-stamped earth ramps and battering rams, brought thus near to the walls, combined with the attack by foot, soldiers using mines, breaches, as well as saper work. Thus I reduced his country, but I still increased the tribute of the presents due to me as his overlord, which I imposed later upon him, beyond the former tribute, to be delivered annually. Hezekiah himself, whom the terror-inspiring splendor of my lordship had overwhelmed, and whose irregular and elite troops, which he had brought into Jerusalem, his royal residence, in order to strengthen, had deserted him, did send men later to Nineveh, my lordly city, together with 30 talents of gold, 800 talents of silver, precious stones, antimony, large cuts of red stone, couches inlaid with ivory, chairs inlaid with ivory, elephant hides, ebony wood, boxwood, and all kinds of valuable treasures. That is what Sennacherib said of Hezekiah, the king of Judah. If we are following along, and if people can hear me and are in good spirits, please, I ask, type in the number 4 as we get into this. This is what Esarhaddon, whom they want to say Deuteronomy 28 ends with, in prophecy stated. I called up the kings of Hatti and of the region of the other side of the river Euphrates, to wit, Balu, the king of Tyre, Manasseh, king of Judah. Hold on. What? Manasseh, king of Judah, brothers and sisters, is mentioned by Esarhaddon. Manasseh is mentioned there, and Esarhaddon is mentioned in the book of Chronicles. So let's see what Ezra says, and why do we want to go there for reference purposes. Now, when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of the captivity were building a temple unto Yah, the God of Israel, then they drew near to Zerubbabel and to the heads of the fathers' houses, and said unto them, let us build with you, for we seek your God as ye do. And we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon of Assyria, who brought us up here hither. Now, the Israelites did not want to make a league with these people, knowing that they were the adversaries of the people of the Israelites, to build it. You understand? So what do we want to point out? Thank you all for typing in the number 4. That these kings mentioned Israelites in their records. Now, what portions I just read came again out of this book here. This is the Ancient Near East and Texan Pictures, edited by James Pritchard. All right, just want to point that out for reference purposes. So we read about Manasseh, and before that we read about Hezekiah. Sargon II, as pointed out in the presentation here, is mentioned in the Bible in Isaiah chapter 20. See how all that history ties in? Where are the Assyrians? I'll wait. Thank you. Any nation coming against Israel, the Most High destroy and will destroy. I ask again, where are the Assyrians? I'll wait. The Bible talks about them, and they talk about the things that the Bible talks about. Did the Israelites, oh, they plagiarized? Did one plagiarize from the other? No, absolutely not. So these are things we want to point out for reference purposes. Let's look at this, family. Thank you all for participating in this. The Old Testament timeline. Now let's look. We have here the period of the kings, and I want to circle this so we see what we're talking about for reference purposes. All right? In that particular matter. The period of the kings. Then we see here the fall of the southern kingdom. The fall of the southern kingdom is in 586 BCE. Let's go back, remembering that now, right? Let us go back and see what we're seeing. Ashurbanipal, sometimes pronounced as Ashurbanipal, the last Assyrian king. Assyria fell, brothers and sisters, as a kingdom before the southern kingdom of Judah. while the southern kingdom of Judah was still in operation, is when Assyria fell. Who were the prophets in part at that time? We're going to show with the highlighter, if we will, right? Jeremiah and Ezekiel. I'm going to ask the brother, we're going to go back into, want to show on the camera, this book here. We're going to be reading out of this book that was just shown, the Bible, the scriptures. And we're going to be reading, brothers and sisters, I'm going to ask if the brother Yirmiyahu can type in 2 Kings 24, verse 8. And we want to let the book speak for itself. All right? 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 8. And here is what we want to point out regarding that for edification purposes. All right? Let's look, family. And it says the following. I wanted to have it shown on the screen in that manner. Thank you for that. It says this. 2 Kings 24, verse 8. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yah, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and the servants did besiege it. And Jehoiakim, king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants, and his princes and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign, meaning in the 8th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of Yah, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces the vessels of gold which Solomon king of Israel had made, in the temple of Yah, as Yah had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths, none remained, save the poorest sort of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty of the land. Those carried he into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. Brothers and sisters, let's go, having just read in 2 Kings, right? Taking the people captive. If it said they only left the poorest sort of the people of the land, let's go, and I'm going to ask if the brother can type it in. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 1, and see what we can gather in that particular case. We are in the scriptures. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 1. And it reads as follows. Now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of Elohim. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity. So King Jehoiakim at this point is in his 20s. All right. The word of Yah came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi. So when he was among the captives by the river Chebar, over in the Babylonian captivity, Ezekiel was one of the people taken that we see in the book of Kings. That's why I wanted to go into that particular portion and read. Now let's pull this back up, if we will, brothers and sisters, and look and see what we see. Because what we see here, brothers and sisters, in this particular case with the highlighter, we see Ezekiel right here, as we see Jeremiah right here. So brothers and sisters, this is after the Assyrians fell as an empire. Now, if Esarhaddon was not the last Assyrian king, and Assyria fell in 609 BCE to the Babylonians, namely to Nabopolassar, the father of Nebuchadnezzar, what are people talking about when they say the prophecies that we see in Deuteronomy 28 culminated during the time of Esarhaddon, as we want to point out here, as the thumbnail in the YouTube shows a picture of him, and we see that he spoke about Manasseh, the king of Judah. Now let's look at this, brothers and sisters. You had Manasseh, king of Judah, the son of Hezekiah. Then after Manasseh was Ammon. After Ammon was Josiah. After Josiah, you had Jehoiakim. And then you had his son, Josiah's grandson, Jehoiakim. See how many generations that is? So now you have it to where Assyria fell during the time of the prophesying of Jeremiah and during the time of the kings Manasseh and Ammon of Judah. So if Josiah is the grandson of Manasseh, and if Jehoiakim, we just read of in the book of Kings, is the grandson of Josiah, this is several generations after the Assyrian Empire done fell. Why do we want to point that out? Because we just read in Kings where it says, as Yah stated. Where did Yah state that we just read about these walls coming down of the people outside of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, that high and fortified walls on which you trust shall come down? These are things we want to point out, because when people don't understand, no disrespect intended, or there's a lack of understanding, I want to say people are not understanding about timeline and place. And if you read the book called The Lost Books of the Bible, which I hardly ever cite, but there is a thing in there called the Testimony of the Tribes. And in the Testimony of Naphtali, he stated that hatred blocks wisdom. Hatred blocks wisdom. So you're not going to go into the timeline that we see with the Assyrian kings. You're not going to go into the timeline showing Ezekiel and Jehoiakim being in the same generation. So by default, Jehoiakim was 18. Before him, you had Jehoiakim, and he passed away at age 36. Some say through Nebuchadnezzar's sin, some say maybe not. And before that, you had Josiah, who died at age 39. Josiah passed away during the time when Dynasty 26 was occurring in Egypt. Dynasty 26, brothers and sisters, if we will, no, we don't have to. Going into the Egyptian book thing that we went into earlier, right? That's when Necho Embre was ruling. And you read about Necho in the book of Chronicles. He was the person who assassinated Josiah, the king of Judah. You understand? After Dynasty 26, you had Dynasty 27. Dynasty 27 of Egypt is when the people of Persia was ruling in Egypt. All of this history ties in. Went too far for the moment. I wanted to go back into Ezra. The adversaries of Judah and Benjamin. I'm going to ask the brother, Yirmiyahu, if he can, if he's present, thank you. Type in Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. Because we just read something in Ezra, right? Chapter 4. So let's let the book speak for itself. And go to Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. All right? Hopefully everybody is well and will be better. All right? When I say that, I'm saying that we can all be better is the point in that particular case. We're going to be reading in the scriptures, letting the book speak as we collaborate what we're talking about. And Ezra chapter 1, verse 1 says, Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of Yah by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. Yah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, and it goes into such. So, brothers and sisters, pulling the PowerPoint back up, if we will, right? So we see Ezra is having the situations during the time when Persia was ruling. Persia was ruling after Babylon ruled, and Babylon ruled after Assyria ruled. So how are we going to look at Esarhaddon, who wasn't even the last Assyrian king, to sit there and state that that is when the prophecies that we see Jeremiah still talking about happening in that manner? All right, how can we say that in that particular case? Brothers and sisters, we can't. So these are just things that we care to point out for reference purposes. All right, let me go back, if we will, because I want to take that particular part off. All right, just want that to be shown. Again, my brother, thank you for your assistance in this particular matter. All right, so let's pull this back up. And it goes on to say, if we will, looking at the Old Testament timeline, brothers and sisters, right? In this particular case, we see Jeremiah. We read about him already. We read about him in Ezra just now. And Ezekiel. Ezekiel talked about Jehoiakim. Now, when you go on your own time on the channel, Mordeh Yeshaya History Lessons, there's a presentation called From Jerusalem to the Hood. All right, that's a presentation. You can go on this channel. All right, I could put it in the description. I will. All right, where we went over the Berlin Museum showing the Babylonians talking about they taking Judah. All right, and King Jehoiakim being part of that particular captivity. All right, so just want to point that out for reference purposes. So, brothers and sisters, we're going to go back into this particular matter. We see Lamentations, we see Ezekiel, we see Jeremiah. We don't see Ezra till after the timing of 515 BCE, after the Babylonian exile, when Babylon fell to the Medes and the Persians, and another group of people. Want to know what group of people that is? Stay tuned. As soon as I remember, because I just forgot. Sorry, that's why I say that. But getting back, brothers and sisters, into this particular presentation, let's continue in this. Jeremiah chapter 36, verse 4 and verse 8. Then Jeremiah called Baruch the son of Neriah, and Baruch wrote from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of Yah, which he had spoken unto him, upon the roll of a book. And Baruch the son of Neriah did according to all that Jeremiah the prophet commanded him, reading in the book the words of Yah in the Most High's house. Brothers and sisters, what you see there is called a bula. We're going to have a presentation October 16th about artifacts showing the existence of ancient Israel. Not that we need it, not that it supersedes the laws, but it does confirm, excuse me, in part what what Psalm says, the truth of Yah will come from the earth. So, these are things we want to point out. Baruch the son of Neriah, And as you can see, what they call paleo, which simply means ancient Hebrew in that particular case. All right, so we're going to look at it with the pen, if we will, in the black. Baruchya, the son of Neriah or Neriyahu. And that is what we're seeing in this case. I'm going to show with the highlighter, if I may. I wanted to show in a color that will stand out. But the top part that you see going there, I think it's showing pretty clearer on y'all screen than on mine, even from the looks of it. That is the part that speaks about Baruchya, or the prophet Baruch. So we just want to point that out for reference purposes, if we will. Now, Jeremiah, in Jeremiah chapter 1, states that he began to prophesy in the 13th year of Josiah. Josiah began to reign at age 8. 13 years after that, Josiah is about 21. He passed away at age 39, and the book of Chronicles says that Jeremiah the prophet made lamentation for him. So if in the era of Carchemish, which you see of in the scriptures in the book of 2 Kings chapter 23, and that's confirmed in secular sources, Josiah passed away during that timing when the Battle of Carchemish existed. And there's a presentation on the channel called The Black Man or Black History in the Old Testament. That's the name of it, on Mora Yeshaya History Lessons, in which I talk about that time frame much more detail than I do here. Wanted to get back into the significant matter of what we're talking about in this particular case. Brothers and sisters, if we will. Israel, why you ain't got your book out? You see, Jeremiah didn't write it. It says that Baruch wrote from the mouth of Jeremiah. So you can even have an audio book these days. You can even sit there and have a ghostwriter, as some call it. Why you ain't got your book out? Just want to hopefully motivate somebody to become an author. Nothing wrong with it. All right, so let's look at this and knowing the time frame that we're talking about. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 15 or verse 17, in Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 11. Then Yah said unto me, out of the north, the evil shall break forth upon the inhabitants of the land. For lo, I will call all the families of the kingdoms of the north, saith Yah, and they shall come, and they shall set everyone his stone at the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem, and against all the walls that are round about, and against all the cities of Judah. And it goes on to say, and I will utter my judgments against them, touching all their wickedness, and that they have forsaken me and offered unto other gods and worshiped the work of their own hands. And this whole land shall be a desolation and a waste. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Babylon, we remember, took over Assyria. Jeremiah, prophesying during the time of Josiah, was after Assyria empire fell, after Esarhaddon. So why are people going around saying the prophecy in Deuteronomy 28 was fulfilled during the time of Esarhaddon? No, it wasn't. Not in culmination. This started before then and continued even after. And we want to point this out for reference purposes. So let's continue. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 17 to 18. Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven them away. And you see the image of the lion of Babylon on the right-hand side. First, the king of Assyria have devoured him. No, sorry, that's the image of Assyria's lion. My fault. First, the king of Assyria have devoured him. And last, as Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, have broken his bones. Therefore, thus says Yah of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land as I have punished the king of Assyria. Punishing the king of Assyria, Israel didn't have to sit there and throw a rock. The Most High handled it through the hands of other nations. Situation with Egypt, the Most High used what we could call natural elements to make war against them. So don't sleep on Yah. Don't think that the Most High does not know, hear, and understand. You understand? When, for the lack of a better term, There was beef between these different nations. The Most High said to Jeremiah, is there anything too hard for me, saith Yah. We don't think the Most High knows what we call in the street beef and what it's about and what it is. I would say Todah Yah. What I know and understand, they used to have a term, I don't know if it's all over the United States, but I know they refer to it as called dipping. And let me show what I'm talking about. Dipping is when somebody is walking and they take their hand and they go into their waist area as if they're pulling a gun out. This dude, when I was in New York one time, did that, but he didn't get the chance to pull the burner or the gun or the gat or the ekdak in Hebrew out. By the way, those saying ekdak is Hebrew, it is, but it comes from the word dakwak, which means to spark. So ekdak literally means I will spark. But brothers and sisters, they say the word robe also means pistol, but let's move on if we will. And by the way, if guns existed in ancient Israel, then yeah, King David would have had his Glock 9. So like, oh, you're talking about weapons, but we talk about bow and shield and arrow. Arrows could be more dangerous than a bullet for those who do know. But getting back, brothers and sisters, into this, all I remember was in broad daylight, a loud, I was 19 at the time, a loud thunder and lightning from the heavens. That is my word to Yah of heaven and earth. The guy who was in the mode of thinking to rob me, perhaps, when I turned around, all I did and see was see him running and running and running. Maybe he felt, maybe I shouldn't do this to this guy. And all I can do is say Todah Yah for protecting one from danger seen and unseen, as we talk about. So do not sleep or do not think that the Most High does not know and see things, brothers and sisters. He knows everything. The scriptures talk about everything from money to sex to beef with people in the street, right down to the priestly offerings and honoring your parents. So these are things, again, we want to point out. So he said in Jeremiah that he's going to punish the king of Babylon and his land as he punished the king of Assyria. Punishing them means that he was going to end them as an empire. So if Assyria fell, and we still see these prophecies that we can relate to Deuteronomy 28 coming to pass, hopefully before we get any further, we already see anybody online or offline teaching that Deuteronomy 28 ended and culminated, and the timing of Esarhaddon is incorrect. All right, next slide, if we will, brothers and sisters. Daniel chapter 7, verse 2. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. This is the Babylonian lion we saw before the Assyrian one. I beheld to the wings thereof were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon 2 feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. The Babylonians talked about the Israelites. The Assyrians talked about the Israelites, and the Israelites talked about them both. We don't need Egypt to sit there and solidify our existence, house of Israel. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not necessary as if without Egypt, what are we going to do? No. Let's just get our studying on and what it is with that. This is talking about Babylon. All right. I beheld to the wings thereof were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon 2 feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. I always understand that man's heart being Nebuchadnezzar. All right, let's go on. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus of the seed of the Medes, who was of the king, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, meditated in the books over the number of the years, whereof the word of Yah came to Jeremiah, the prophet, that he would accomplish for the desolation of Jerusalem 70 years. We just read that in Jeremiah chapter 25. Pardon about that. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, and have turned aside, so as to not hearken to thy voice. And so there have been poured out upon us the curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God. For we have sinned against him. I'm going to ask if the brother can type in where we're going to be reading. Deuteronomy chapter 30, brothers and sisters. All right? We're going to be reading, if we will, in Deuteronomy chapter 30. And here is what we read in this particular case. And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I set before thee, that thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shall return to the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice, according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out into the utmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. And Yah thy God will circumcise thy heart and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thy enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecute thee. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of Yah, and do all his commandments which I command thee this day. So, brothers and sisters, as the brother Chief Uziel pointed out when I was watching the DCB channel, I want to land back, not piggyback in Israel. We don't do the pig, but I want to land back on what the man stated. And that is, where are we told to look for a Messiah? In the book of Malachi, the Most High said he will send his angel. Where are we told to look for that angel? That's a question. Can anybody type it into the chat? I don't know everything, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. Where did the Most High tell us to look for a Mashiach? Why is Israel so the Mashiach? We got to look for and wait for the prophet Deuteronomy talks about the Mashiach. What did the Most High through the prophet Moses state is Israel's responsibility? It says, and shall return to the Lord thy God. No, look for a Messiah. And shall return to the Lord thy God. No, look for a particular prophet and debate whether it's Muhammad, debate whether it's Jesus, or debate whether it's Joshua. And shall return to the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice. No, we're saved, so we don't have to keep the law no more, according to all that I command thee this day. So Israel was never told about getting a new book. This is the book, the Torah, that was given to the house of Israel. The rest of the Tanakh doesn't say it's a new thing because Israel fell, so something else came along. That's not the thesis from Joshua to Malachi. That's the thesis of the Quran, saying that Ishmael became a power because Israel fell. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, when you get back into this particular matter, if we will, brothers and sisters, it says what will happen. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land that thy fathers possess, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good and multiply thee above your fathers. Any father will want that for his offspring. You want your children to be better than you. And the Lord thy God will circumcise thy heart and the heart of thy seed. See how nothing in there is saying, look for the Mashiach. Look for the angels. Ask the angels what their name is. Who was that in Daniel when it says one like unto the Son of God. Let's have a whole class on it. That's not what Yah is telling Yisrael to do. That is not, again, what Yisrael is told to do. We're supposed to be more so on a human level, focus on our seed. Make sure our children are good. Proverbs 13, I believe, is that, where it says a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So Israelites talking about, I'm messianic, I'm not messianic. We're looking and trying to see the Mashiach as the lamb, when, not to get sidetracked, a male lamb is never offered for a sin offering. From Leviticus to Ezra, a male lamb is never offered for a sin offering. Only a female lamb is, and that's for a particular person. The offering that's done on Yom Kippur cannot be substitute between saying a goat and a lamb. Whereas the offering for Passover, you can have it from the goat or the lamb. However, the sin offering in Passover is a goat, not a lamb. So a male lamb is never again offered for a sin offering. It says, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. So how can one be a prophet and a Mashiach, a Messiah, according to some, and be right to be touched? How can we read Isaiah, not to get sidetracked, Isaiah the 53rd chapter, and people are up there saying this is a Mashiach and he was meant to go through this and that? Isaiah 53 doesn't even mention the word anointed, nor does the Hebrew mention the word Mashiach. If Psalms is saying, touch not Mashiachai, my anointed ones, which is plural, when you get to the Hebrew, and do my prophets no harm, how can it be right for one that is anointed to be touched and harmed? And if you're not supposed to offer anything that has a blemish in it, how can you be the person, Psalms mentioning that, touch not my anointed? How can the offering be done in sin, mistranslating Isaiah 53 verse 10? We're going to do something because you got some Israelites. I was Old Testament based, but now I changed. Don't think somebody ain't going to check somebody on that. Real talk. And this is not to talk tough or disrespectful or anything of that sort. Somebody has to sit there and say, no, brother, it is not. In the beginning, he created God. Somebody has to point out that not Zor with the Zadeh and Nazir in Numbers chapter 6 with the Zion is not the same Hebrew word. Somebody got to say it, brothers and sisters. You understand? So, not again getting sidetracked from one way or the other, but just letting the book itself speak, keeping it simple if we will. You're not supposed to offer that which is blemished. So Isaiah 53, in the mistranslation, saying he gave himself an offering for sin, it doesn't mean that. It says he gave himself an offering for restitution. The guilt offering and the sin offering is not the same when you read in Leviticus chapter 2 to chapter 6. And again, a male lamb is never offered for a sin offering. And if you don't have that, it says there's other things that you can offer and such. The sin offering for Passover is a male goat that is not 33 years old and does not have any blemishes. So you can't say with his stripes we were healed in Isaiah 53, which means that you definitely by that point got a blemish, and say that's the same thing as your offering when you're not supposed to do that kind of matter. Furthermore, letting it be known and understood for edification purposes, if we will, brothers and sisters, so the stance can be known and what we're talking about. We're going to let the book speak. Leviticus chapter 22, if we will. Leviticus 22, I'm going to ask if the brother Yirmiyahu can type in where we're going to be reading in the verse that is. Right? Leviticus 22, verse 25. So we can bring this for edification purposes. All right? Leviticus 22, verse 25 says the following. Neither from the stranger's hand shall you offer the bread of your God, of any of these, because their corruption is in them, and blemishes be in them, they shall not be accepted for you. Who knows what these nations do with these animals? So, brothers and sisters, to get back quickly, not trying to sound like being in a rush, if we will. The general said sacrifice that people are talking about offering. It said from the hand of the foreigner is not to be accepted. Pontius Pilate is not an Israelite. The story you read and see in Matthew chapter 27 in the New Testament, Pontius Pilate was one of the procurators in history that was working under, brothers and sisters, Tiberius of Rome. Tiberius was the successor of Augustus. This may explain why you read of Augustus and Tiberius in the said Gospels of the New Testament. Pontius Pilate was a Japhetic man. So if he was the person conducting the sacrifice of a said Messiah, Mashiach, which was you're not supposed to touch them. That's why David didn't want to touch Saul. Touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. Saul was anointed because Mashiach means anointed. Messiah is a transliteration that people done sat there and took and tried to sit there and say all kinds of things about. So as we talk about the history and we're getting into the time frame with Yom Kippur and so forth of that nature, you can't sit there and say somebody died for you and atone for your sins and quote, as the letters of the New Testament or the epistles in Galatians says, for Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, and then say we're going to sit there and make atonement by prayers. You can't. If he did it for you, you can't say you're doing it. And if he didn't do it for you, then we got to go back again into this Old Testament, because there's a reason why. Not getting sidetracked again. You cannot prove you're an Israelite by going outside of the Tanakh before you go to other sources. There is no, quote, as some say, it's not a New Testament. It's the renewal of the covenant. I'm going to, if we will, for edification purposes, brothers and sisters, which is kind of sidetracked from the lesson, if I may say. But I'm going to, if the brother's even comfortable in such, I'm going to read something out the New Testament to show what we're talking about and why, for those who care to hear, why we are Old Testament based, if we will. All right, let's go into the New Testament, which is something that we generally really do not do. Being Old Testament based, that's not something the brother shies and talking about. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 8. Now, some people say Paul wrote Hebrews. Some people say he didn't. Regardless of that, let's read what it says in this case. We're going to be reading in the New Testament, in this case, Hebrews chapter 8, and we're going to be reading in verse 6. I'll type it in. Hebrews 8:6. All right. Oh, thank you. I see you typed it in. Thank you. We're going to start in verse 6. It says here, but now has he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if the first covenant had been faultless, then should no place had been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to lead them, out of the land of Egypt, because they continue not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write it in their hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities I will remember no more. Verse 13. Let's get ready. It says this. In that he says a new covenant. He hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. What are you saying? What are you saying? That the old covenant was made to vanish away. It says in verse 13 again, and that he says a new covenant. He hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth away is ready to vanish away. So the theme of the New Testament, certainly in the letters of Paul, is not, brothers and sisters, the renewal of the old covenant, but in something in place of the old covenant. So these are just things we want to point out while going over this kind of matter. And to show what the brother is saying there in the Hebrew, zeloto means that's not good or this is not good. It is not good to say the old covenant is, quote, done away with. No. Not trying to be funny. You saw that movie Scarface? And it comes to mind, not trying to be cynical or nothing. With that guy, Frank. No. I know. Let's get back to the scriptures and be serious. Sorry. That's not good. See, you can't go into the portion in Deuteronomy 28. We already dealt with the matter, but we got more notes regarding it not being with the matter of Esarhaddon. You can't go into the matter of Deuteronomy 28 and not answer the portion that says, after you were being scattered, you go and worship other gods. See, when they come to Tanakh Israelites and say, you know what? If you were doing it like that, and if you believed in Moses, then you will believe in Yeshua. You know that belief is different between Tanakh-based Israelites and Moshe and the people who call themselves Messianics in Yeshua. You believe Yeshua was with the Creator when he said, let us make man. We don't believe Moses was there when it said, let us make man. You believe that Proverbs 8:22, I was there before him as a nursling, that was JC or Yeshua. We don't believe that that's Moses and Proverbs 8 playing in this habitable earth. And my delights are with the sons of men. We don't say that's Moses, as you say that that's Yeshua. We don't say that Moses died and will be coming back, as you all say of Yeshua. So there are certain things that we care to point out in saying that particular matter, if you will. We do not believe that Moses was the pillar of cloud that Paul said was Jesus in Corinthians. We don't believe that it is okay, as Paul wrote in Philippians, saying that Jesus is equal to God, the Most High. And when Moses said, shall we bring forth, you did not sanctify me in the midst of the children of Israel. But this is something Chief Naftali pointed out some time ago. May he rest in peace. When, even before that situation at the waters of Meribah, the generation that came out that's 20 years old and upward, Moses and Aaron was certainly 20 years old and upward, it said that generation should not go into the land. Maybe it was not meant for Moses to go into the land. When the Most High gave Moses the commandment, it was bring my people out of Egypt. They will worship me, Yah, at this mountain. I'm going to give you the laws. You lead the people. Nowhere was Moses ever told he's going to even go into the land. You're saying that Jesus Christ is going to come back and rule on the throne of David. We're not saying Moses is going to come back and rule on the throne of David. So you can't say, well, if you believe in Moses, you'll believe in Yeshua, because the things that you say of Yeshua, we do not say about Moses. We say Moses did sin. Will you say Yeshua sinned? We say Moses was not perfect. You're not going to fix your mouth to say Yeshua was not perfect. See the differences? So please stop saying if you believe in Moses, you'll believe, because we don't see Moses the same way you see Yeshua. Israel. The Yeshua in the book of Zechariah is from the tribe of Levi. When it says, I see Yeshua the high priest, he was a Levite. The Yeshua that you're talking about in the New Testament, even in Hebrews 7, is talking about a matter of one of Judah. Two different tribes. With the time allotted, we're going to read something again in Hebrews to show why we are Old Testament based. This is in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 15. All right. Some people say, oh, why even go into there? Because we want to show what we're talking about for reference purposes, if we will, brothers and sisters. Because not to get sidetracked, you got some Israelites, and it's not to knock on Israel, because many Israelites are what you would call Messianic, some of my best friends. But you can't go on or offline and leave people wondering, what do you believe in? What are you about? What is your doctrine? Don't do that, brothers and sisters. Either you're Tanakh based or you're Bible based. And what we all can agree upon, we can walk together in according to the book of Amos. What we cannot agree upon, we won't be able to walk together. But anybody saying you challenge somebody in the matter of a confrontation or a debate, we're going to read this. It is in Hebrews, in the New Testament, chapter 9, verse 15. All right? I'll type it in. Hebrews 9:15. And let's see what this says. And for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Who's this testator? They're going to tell you it's Yeshua. Let's see what it says. We are in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 18. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood, for when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and of goats and water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book and the people. So we know what covenant and law is being spoken about by the name of mention of Moses. So what are we pointing out? For a testament is of force after men are dead. So if Joshua is the testator, and if his death was necessary, I'm going to ask if we can read, brothers and sisters, in Deuteronomy 18, verse 9. And let's see what it says in that particular case. We're going back to the Tanakh, the Old Testament as it's called. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 9 says the following. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, which is a male witch, or a necromancer. Necromancer, we don't do that. We pointed out that a seance and dealing with the matter of a necromancer, brothers and sisters, is certainly against the laws of the Most High. That again is something we want to point out for reference purposes. So if the death of the testator, in this case being Jesus Christ, was necessary in Hebrews chapter 9, and you're praying in that name, you are calling on the dead. So getting back into this presentation that we were saying, let's continue on, family, with this. All right, and let's move on into this particular case, giving honor and praise unto the Most High, creator, maker of heaven and earth. We want to get back into the history lesson that we're talking about, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. If I can be heard and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Now, hopefully we have pointed out that there's no way, shape, form, or fashion that Deuteronomy's 28 prophecy started in ancient Israel, but culminated and ended during the time of Esarhaddon. Hopefully we know and see what that is in that particular case. So now getting back into Daniel chapter 9, where it says, yea, all Israel hath transgressed thy law, and hath turned aside, so as not to hearken to thy voice. And so there have been poured out upon us the curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of Elohim. The curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses. That's not Deuteronomy 28, then what is? Yeah, it is. But we see this being spoken upon. All right, we want to go from this part right here. We want to point out, brothers and sisters, with the highlighter, that says Darius of the seed of the Medes and the Persians. Well, the Medes is a different nation than the Persians, one Japhetic Medes and one Shemitic Persia, one from the Median, which is from Madiah, Japhet, and the other one being the people of Elam from the line of Shem. Looking at this, right, with the matter of the Medes. This is after Assyria fell as a kingdom, but yet we still see the people talking about the curse and the oath that's written in the law of Moses. That would be in today's understanding, Deuteronomy 28. So if that be the case, then how can we sit back and think, brothers and sisters, that it was fulfilled then? 1 second, family. Sorry about that. I had to deal with that phone call that was of importance. Giving honor and praise to the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. The timeline has been ignored in order to sit there and try to say that Deuteronomy 28 prophecy ended in the time of the Assyrian ruler Esarhaddon. Baruch, who lived during the Babylonian rule, he writes what we see in the Apocrypha here. Therefore the Lord hath made good his word, which he pronounced against us, and against our judges that judge Israel, and against our kings, and against our princes, and against the men of Israel and Judah. Against our kings, and against our princes, and against the men of Israel and Judah. It's a couple of things to point out. No disrespect intended. Your 12-tribe chart that basically is saying that Israel, the northern kingdom, went into Assyria, as if Judah didn't, and the southern kingdom, Judah, went into Babylon as if Judah didn't go into Assyria. This right here in the Apocrypha in the book Baruch kind of eliminates that thought. You understand? It kind of eliminates that thought because Baruch, which was contemporary with Jeremiah, was after Assyria fell. But we see him mentioned in the men of Israel and Judah to bring upon us great plagues such as never happened under the whole heaven, as it came to pass in Jerusalem, according to the things that are written in the law of Moses, that a man should eat the flesh of his own son and the flesh of his own daughter. Moreover, he hath delivered them to be in subjection to all the kingdoms that are round about us, and to be as a reproach and desolation among all the people round about, where the Most High has scattered them. Let's read, if we will, brothers and sisters, right? In this portion here, and I'm going to ask if the brother Yirmiyahu is willing and able to, if he's hearing. Let's read Deuteronomy 28, verse 53, if we will. All right? Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 53. And what do we see in this case? And thou shalt eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness wherewith thy enemy shall distress thee. That's Deuteronomy 28, verse 53. This is one of the saddest prophecies. According to what we just read in Baruch, right? He was saying that that was happening during his time. When you go in the book of Josephus, it said that happened also during the time of the Romans. See, what do we want to point out? There's another theory that says Deuteronomy 28 ended during the time of the Romans. But how are you the one saying that when you can't even say your people went through the things Deuteronomy 28 talk about? And will these European Jews say that their ancestors were partly, sadly, indulgent in cannibalism? Because their thing is the black people saying that Israel, was worshiping idols. So was Jeroboam, and so was Ahab, and so was Manasseh, and so was Solomon. You want to know who brought idols heavy into Israel? Was Solomon, not Jeroboam. Jeroboam made it real big. Ahab made it real big. But the one who brought idols into Israel as a leader was Solomon. That's the truth. Yes, as is asked, dual prophecy. And how do we know dual prophecy in this case? I'm going to ask, or even prophecies that go on and on. How do we know that? I'm going to ask you, my brother, to type in, I'll type it in, sorry. We're going to be reading in Deuteronomy 28, verse 45 through verse 46. And let's see what it says in that particular case. It says this, Deuteronomy 28, verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. These curses shall pursue, overtake, till thou be destroyed. So there is no pinpoint to say that prophecy only was then. That is what we want to point out in that particular case. Somebody asks, was Solomon tricked? No, Solomon was not tricked. Whereas Jeroboam deliberately made the false gods. Solomon was the son of David. Solomon was at least 15, we're going to say, years old at the death of Dawid, his father. He knew by the prophets. It's certainly not his dad, because he wasn't raised in idolatry. So Solomon was not tricked. Solomon, no disrespect, not that I'm righteous, I'm not perfect myself. Solomon simply went astray. You understand? What apocryphal books can we accept as truth? Anything that goes in line with the laws of the Most High God and doesn't conflict with such. With history, it's not that history has to go in laws with the Most High God, because it's history. You know what I mean? But as far as it's not telling you that somebody done died for you and you can practice divination and you can eat blood and things of that kind of nature and everything is all right, no. All right, I'm being asked right because of the strange women, but the strange women didn't trick him. He married those strange women. The strange women didn't walk into Israel and say, hey, we want to be your wives. And if they did, he had the jurisdiction on whether he was okay with it or not. So, and no disrespect, not trying to bash or disrespect Solomon, is we don't want to present it as if he was just tricked and by these, oh my gosh, these women. No. If that be the case, and so forth and so on, because we know good, well, and understand that Solomon knew right from wrong. Exactly, as the brother Jay Fredden just typed in, self-accountability. You know, we don't want to do, no disrespect, say like Adam did. The woman you gave me, stop it. Self-accountability. Don't sit there as a man, if you want to say it like that, say it's the woman, because you really look beta male at that point. But Jeroboam could have talked to Ahijah in counseling, but he didn't. He turned to making false gods himself. That's true. Jeroboam could have sat there and talked with the prophet, but there were prophet Nathan in the time of David. The person who anointed Solomon was Zadok the priest. Zadok wasn't worshiping idols. One of the idols that Solomon sadly brought in was the Molech worship. That's when they'll take their child and pass it through the fire that we just read about in Deuteronomy 18. That's murder. You killing a child in a weird hope that you get more children. That you just murdered that baby. Thou shalt not murder. Child sacrifice is against the laws of the Most High in murder. Nobody should have to tell the king's son, thou shalt not murder. You were not tricked into that. You just went astray. Now, what Solomon said of himself in Ecclesiastes is that he delved into the dark side of wisdom. Never, correct me if I'm wrong, unlike no disrespect intended like Adam, did he sit there and say, the woman you gave me, Solomon ate that, if you will. He took the accountability on his own self and didn't want to sit there and say it was somebody else. But yes, Solomon definitely, like the brother Yirmiyahu pointed out, knew better. I'm going to use myself, if I may, as an example. I remember pointing out that when I was a child, I was a thief. I pointed out even to my brother Jared. How you doing, Aki? Shalom. I was a thief as a child. When I was up there stealing from my mommy and stealing from this person and that person, nobody tricked me into doing it. I knew when I was going to the store with the stolen money that it was wrong. And it was like, yo, you got a lot for being 8, 9 years old. I'm coming out with you understand, a $5 bill, several singles, like this is a 10. And we all gonna go to the store and I'm gonna sit there and buy, not being funny, when we go to school, I'm gonna buy you the 50-cent ice cream that I stole from the money of my ima. My ima meaning mother. Nobody told me to do that. That lady at the thing did not sit there and say, I want you to go and steal from your mommy for me. I chose to do that. So I'm saying that not to sound haughty or arrogant or to bash Solomon, but we cannot as men, and I'm sure Solomon's Proverbs is speaking upon it, about their accountability, saying one can't say they were tricked. You knew what you was doing in this particular matter. So let's continue on, brothers and sisters. And I do appreciate the dialogue back and forth. All right. And we're going to get into this, if we will. Now, getting back into this part right here, right, in the book of Baruch, in the Apocrypha, we definitely can agree with this. He has delivered them into subjection, to all the kingdoms that are round about us. That's in Jeremiah as well. All right. So wherever Israel was scattered, it's the prophets and the scribes are letting us know that it was by the hand of the Most High this happened. They could not have come against us in their own strength. They are not that strong. We pointed out before that the Romans were talking about how, in so many words, they couldn't handle the knuckle game of the sons of Levi and Judah. They had to go underneath the ground in order to sit there and do that. They couldn't sit there and handle those fists of the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Levites when they was defending their own thing. And the book I'm citing from is called Jews Under Roman Rule by Mary Surratt, since the era of Nero. Person. All right. So just want to point that out for reference purposes. If I can be heard and people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. All right. I do appreciate you all doing that. It helps me with the lesson and so forth. All right. If I can be heard well and people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you. It goes on to say this here. Next slide. From Assyria to America. And that is the book a brother wrote. From Assyria to America. You can get that book online. The first picture you see there to the far left is the Assyrians showing Israelites as captives. This picture has been shown before. You might see it right here being circled. We want to show maybe in black, if we will. All right. In that particular case, there's images coming from Lachish, which was in the land of Judah. And these individuals you see there are the Assyrians. Bow down there. What's the difference between he bowed down there and he bowed down here? Saying, am I not a man and a brother? That was part of our captivity in the Western Hemisphere. Do we see how a brother came to the concept of saying from Assyria to America, if we will? The Assyrians showing it and Americans showing it. Hairstyle is the same. One's on one bended knee. Some is shown prostrate on the left-hand side. And then the pictures we see of that book, from Assyria to America, if we will, brothers and sisters. The Assyrian matter. And then Tiglath-Pileser shown on the top. You got John Hawkins, the white man that you see there on the left-hand side. And the black man that you see there is Thomas Jefferson's slave. That's how I had the cover made. The Assyrians on the top, showing them leading the children of Israel into captivity. John Hawkins, who was the captain of the good ship Jesus that worked for Elizabeth I, the daughter of Queen Mary of England in the era of the 16th century. And the black man that you see there on the picture on the far right-hand side in the cover From Assyria to America is a picture of one of Thomas Jefferson's slaves. And then the rest of it shows maps. So whether by plaque and emblem or by the book cover, this is where brother Todayah, though it's a sad situation, where one came up with that. We don't want that to ever be forgotten. When you got another group of people talking about where the Israelites don't know whether they want to be OT or Messianic, that's one subject we talked about. You got people talking about the Atlantic slave trade didn't happen. We was already here. But yet you're talking about here being America, that the Atlantic slave trade too, and it is true, did go east. But you're saying we was already here without a language and a land and a culture. If you're saying that we didn't come from the lands of the East and was brought to the lands of the West, then what is your land, language, and culture? Anything people care to say instead of saying they are son of the Most High God and got to keep his laws, statutes, and commandments. Really? You got the people, and I looked into it with Farrakhan, Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, anything but to keep the commandments of the Most High God. Let us formulate this and go for our reparations. You can't go for reparations under the name black because that's not a proper name. Furthermore, how can you get reparations when the Most High already stated he's going to destroy the enemies of our people? It's one thing as we read, they despoiled the Egyptians. But brothers and sisters, this is not going to be like that. When this ends, when you read in Ezekiel chapter 37 to 39, it's already laid out. The Most High is going to have it to where the seed of David, under the name on the human level, David is going to be sitting on the throne. And we will be under our own land. After Ezekiel 36, talks about being sprinkled with the waters of purification. Not the currency that has Washington that used to sit there and snatch black people's teeth out for his own. And John Adams, he wasn't a slave master, so he was a good guy. There's a presentation called Honoring the 12 Presidents and Ownership. Subscribe to the channel Maury Yeshaya History Lessons. He did not denounce slavery to King George III when he went over there as a delegate for the United States. That being John Adams Sr., not John Quincy Adams, who didn't want to help black people, though he wasn't a slave master himself. And then you have Thomas Jefferson and his slaves shown there on the book cover. Then you have the gentleman, James Madison and James Monroe. And then you have, brothers and sisters, John Quincy Adams. And then you got the famous, we're going to get into, Andrew Jackson, who had his own children in slavery. So getting back into this, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes, we hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. Let's continue, if we will, brothers and sisters. The Babylonians, which were important to the Israelites, are as follows. Nabopolassar defeated Assyria. Nebuchadnezzar captured Judah and held Israelites in captivity. Awil Marduk, also known as Evru Merodach, mentioned by the prophet Jeremiah. Nabonidus, the king of Babylon, some say is the Nebuchadnezzar by name in Daniel chapter 4. Belshazzar, mentioned in the book of Daniel, the last Babylonian king. And that's a line that when I was going through the images, they suggested I use, so I did. Now, brothers and sisters, we're asking you to get your pens, your pads, and your paper and take notes. What we want to do, brothers and sisters, and get into some history. Take the screenshot if you care to. Let's look. Assyria took Israel in 721 BCE. Babylon defeated Assyria in 609 BCE. Babylon took Judah in 586 BCE. Persia defeated Media in 550 BCE. And Babylon was defeated by Media and Persia in 538 BCE. Persia allowed some Israelites to go back to the land in 538 BCE. Persia defeated by Greece in 331 BCE. Greece, under the mantle of Alexander, the Ptolemies had rule over Israel from 320 BCE until 198 BCE, when Scopas was defeated by Antiochus III. You read about that as you go along into the book of the Apocrypha and Maccabees. Greece lost to Rome in two parts, one in 168 BCE in the Pydna battle, and when Paulus defeated Perseus, one in 146 BCE, when Mummius defeated the Greeks in the Third Corinth battle. Brothers and sisters, this is just a timeline about some matters. These are the kind of things, no disrespect, that have to be ignored to say that the prophecy in Deuteronomy 28 culminated and ended during the time, brothers and sisters, of Esarhaddon. Such, brothers and sisters, is not the case. We want to point that out for reference and for edification purposes. So, brothers and sisters, with the time allotted, if we will, we want to take the time out and show the books after we conclude in prayer, because this portion of the presentation has now been concluded. So what we want to do is show, for reference purposes and for edification purposes, what we are talking about when a brother is talking about have written certain books. We want to do it in part for promotional purposes, but we want to first call on Yah, creator, maker of heaven and earth. And as time goes along, for sure, we're going to extend it, want people to collaborate, as the brother Saud Yehu has done in the past, and get into the matter of having people say closing and opening prayers upon the platform. Let us close out, brothers and sisters. Hallelujah. Ba'kwet ha-Shabbat hazeh, in the end of this Sabbath. Yah Eloheinu, O Lord our God, wa Elohei Avoteinu, and the God of our forefathers. Quabel na Sephatenu, wa Imrei Libotenu. Accept our lips and the sayings of our hearts. Salaklanu kikatanu lefaneka. Forgive us, for we have sinned before you. Eloheinu wa Elohei Abotenu, our God and the God of our forefathers. Tiena imanu, will you be with us? Ki anaknu zorkim okalihiyot bakayenu, for we need you in our lives. Enenu yakolim la asot shum the bar biliyoka, for we are unable to do anything without you. Eloheinu, titing la nu hakazak, give us the strength, O Yah. Titing la nu ha-omates, give us the courage, O Yah. Wagam came to Kazek, Wagam came to our mates at Amka Yisrael. Will you make us strong? Will you make us have courage? Will you make us be the people to be the Rosh, the head, and not the Zanab, the tail? Eloheinu, ha-Borei ha-Shemayim, the creator of the heavens. Wagam Cain, ha-El ha-Gomer, ha-El ha-Gorem, the one who completes and the one who starts. Ha-El ha-Ro'eh ha-Kol, the God who sees all. Wa-El ha-Shomea ha-Kol, and the one who hears all. The one who is not seen but sees all. The one who hears all, judges all, and is not judged. Shemana wata'ane otanu Yah. Will you hear us and will you answer us, O Yah? Giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. We are going to leave that portion and that part up and turn on the camera, if we will. All right? We want to show the books here, Sabbath being now over. Not that we was rushing it or anything of that sort. This one here, Israelite history as it relates to the world. This book is online for $20 and will remain as such for $20. You can get this book on Amazon, brothers and sisters. This book right here From Assyria to America, as shown earlier, over 300 pages. This book unto Hanukkah, yes, I do celebrate Hanukkah, which is coming this said December 7th. This book will remain online for $20, if we will. All right. So for those who are interested, this has a lot of history in it. I would like to read the table of contents of it. From Egypt to America, from Avaris to Alabama, the Romans and the Israelites, how to teach Deuteronomy 28, from Ghana to Georgia, from Dahomey to Delaware, from Nigeria to Niagara, from Madagascar to Manhattan. As you see there in the table of contents, yes, there were slave ships taking our ancestors from Madagascar to Manhattan. And that's part of what this book talks about. So just want to point that out for reference purposes. This book here, Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68, History Untold to the Masses. You can get this book online as well, and I'm going to read the table of contents. When I say online, you're going to be able to get it on Amazon. The table of contents reads as such. Introduction. From Sumer to America. Brief history of Israel. Deuteronomy 28, verse 15 to 68. The 12 tribe chart. Extra notes on the subject of history. Appendix A, from Sumer to America, Part 2. Appendix B, Deuteronomy 28:68 extended, getting into that subject. Bibliography and acknowledgments, pictures relating to the chapters. Because inside the chapters, there ain't much pictures, but there's a whole chapter at the end showing the pictures of what we were talking about throughout the book with notes to it. Shout out to the brother Chief Naftali Ben Dan who made this particular cover. All right, this book is going to be $20 until tomorrow night. At that point, the price goes up for this one to $30. Only this one will remain, brothers and sisters, at $20 until Hanukkah or December 7th. All right, so September 24th, that was the end of this sale here. So as of tomorrow night, this book online will be $30. Until then, you can get it online for $20 for those who are interested. All right, we have this one here, brothers and sisters, From Assyria to America, Part 2. And I want to read the table of contents in this one, if you will. All right. The matter of 1619 in Genesis 15. The matter was Egypt. Was the Torah plagiarized from such culture, getting into certain things, showing it to be a totally different culture. From Assyria to America, Part 2. The matter of history in pitches. The name, in other words, the holy name. The tribe of Dan. A matter to be presented. From Angola to Arkansas, why is Mizraim not Egypt? The matter with the Edomites. Conclusion and acknowledgments. So this right here is for those who are interested. This book is and shall remain $20 on Amazon. In that case, we have here Egypt Talk in Writing. This book, as of tomorrow night, will be $30, $20 until then. Egypt Talk in Writing, which was the second book I worked on, but the first book a brother published. I want to read too the table of contents in this. Introduction, Joseph and Dynasty 12. Dispelling some misunderstandings and lies. Debates and Israelite perception. Recap and synopsis. Why chapter 4 is recap and synopsis is because there's a lot of history and I wanted to tie it in, brothers and sisters, in that particular case, if we will. All right. Israel is not from Isis, Ra, and El. Getting into linguistics with that. History to be noted and understood. Questions posed to brothers and sisters. A Hebrew speaks on Black history. There's a lot of history in that chapter. Chapter 9. Egyptians, Israelites, and Greeks. Torah comes from Ma'at, question mark. And that's what that one is there in chapter 10. Pictures and notes, afterword and conclusion, videos for further information, acknowledgments, appendix, memes discussed, pharaohs not found, fertility, notes from a debate, because I had an online debate and I decided to put it into the book, all right, and that is legal to do in that particular case. All right, just want to point that out for reference purposes. This book here will be, as of tomorrow night, $30. Until then, $20. All right, the most controversial book I wrote, Old Testament Israelites' Response to Messianic Israelites. Some brothers who are Messianic even bought this book. Don't know, never got any feedback from them concerning it, but this is one of the books here. I want to read the table of contents in this one, if we will. Introduction, Old Testament Israelite stance. The matter of sacrifices. What about the lamb? Now, the matter of sacrifices, the reason why I made that chapter 2 is because we know that is a hot topic between said Old Testament Israelites and Messianic Israelites. And there's over 50 pages attributed to that chapter. Jeremiah 31, the matter of the covenant. Isaiah 7, Emmanuel and the Assyrians. Deuteronomy 18, a prophet who succeeded Moses. Old Testament-based Israelites respond. Chapter 7, said prophecies of Jesus explained. Chapter 8, Jesus and Paul versus Moses and Solomon. Chapter 9, Old Testament-based Israelites respond, part 2. Chapter 10, conclusion and reasoning. Chapter 11, bibliography. And then there's something there, quote, about the author. So just want to point that out for reference purposes, if we will. All right. This is the book my lady wrote, Chronicles of a Black Woman's Soul. That too you can get by looking it up online. And this book right here is a poetry book. Some of the poems are sad, some of them are funny, but none of them are fake. I've read that myself. Then we have here, brothers and sisters, the Hebrew books. Hebrew is Easy, Volume 1. All right. Then, brothers and sisters, we have, okay, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 2, which I think is a very good book regarding this. I want to show something regarding Hebrews Easy, Volume 2, and that is the table of contents. The hey letter, the pronouns, the feminine nouns and simple possession, sentences, command form, biblical Hebrew discussed on page 34 of such. All right. In that I explain what we know and understand by the meaning of Zephaniah when it says turn the people a pure language. All right. So just want to point that out for reference purposes. So all of these Hebrew books you can get online and they are priced at $10 on Amazon. Hebrew is Easy, Volume 3. This gets into the verbs. All right. And looking at it in that particular case, in the qual stem, the Lamed Aleph, Lamed Hey, Ayin, Lamed Ket, Ayin Wow, Ayin Yod, Pei Nun. And this book right here gets into that kind of matter. This book right here, Hebrews Easy, Volume 4. All right. This is a book based on nouns. Let me read the table of contents, if we will, in this particular case. All right. Introduction, the alphabet, masculine and the masculine singular nouns and possession, the masculine plural nouns and possession, the feminine singular nouns and possession, the feminine plural nouns and possession. All right, so we want to point that out. When you say possession, we're talking about mine, his, hers, and theirs. This one right here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 5. All right, we're talking about let us talk to one another. This has conversations that a man and woman generally will share with each other. And there's a portion in here going over the 10 Commandments in Hebrew. Want to see pioneers who are no longer among us? May they rest in peace. I respect my teachers in this case. I respect my teachers and showing homage to them on a human level. You understand? Don't want that to ever be forgotten in that particular case. All the men we shown on there are now resting with their ancestors. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we definitely want to show homage in that manner. Hebrew is Easy, Volume 6. This is not my Isha. This is a picture of my Ima, my mother. All right. And we're talking about conversations among family. So what I did was take the things that her and I would talk about and translated it in this particular matter right here. And it has a good form of the numbers 1 through 10, masculine, feminine, and things of that kind of nature. We have here, brothers and sisters, Hebrew for Couples, Part 1. And I want to read the table of contents. You can get all of these books on Amazon. And for those who have supported, I appreciate it. Thank you for that, brothers and sisters. Explanation of the letters, vowels, and notes. Grammar. Simple vocabulary of family members. What do we mean on page 48 by simple vocabulary of family members? Man, woman, boy, girl, baby, brother, sister, cousin, uncle, aunt, etc. All right, just want to point that out. So that's what this gets into in this particular case. All right, Hebrew for Couples, Volume 1. That's a picture of me and my lady when we was upstate New York in a place called Bear Mountain. All right. Then we have Hebrew for Couples, Part 2. All right. And that is what we're talking about here. Table of contents, alphabet, family members. S is not the plural in Hebrew. Common words and phrases addressing elders. What do we mean S is not the plural in Hebrew? Ak is brother. So you wouldn't say Akims or my ox. That's what we want to point out in this case right here. Oats is the feminine plural and Eem is the masculine plural. Then we have, brothers and sisters, Hebrew for Couples, Part 3. All right, for reference purposes, if we will. And the table of contents is, we get biblical. Genesis 6:19 and Genesis 7 verse 2. The purpose of this book. Commonly used verbs conjugated. Conjugated meaning past tense, future tense, present tense. The matter with the word wash. That is to say the word rakas, a common used word with couples. The past participle in the nif'al. What is asked, what is borrowed, what is already washed. The matter of the word speak, daber, midaber, etc. Again, the pronouns. That gets into it a little deeper. The matter of the verb want, the word rasa. Biblical Hebrew part, Jeremiah 5 verse 26 translated. The use of the matter of al telek, don't go. Al ta'ase, don't do. So the difference between saying lo ta'ase, you shall not do, and al ta'ase, don't do. So that's what this part, in part what this book points out for reference purposes. All right. Just want to show that all of the books that you see there, the links are going to be in the description when this is uploaded. Give me about an hour or so regarding that. And we're going to close out and give an honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. Shout out. Thank you, my brother, Hebrew boy, Yirmiyahu Yisrael, Yared Judah, Matzatiyah, Sar Yehu, Elizabeth Victoria, looking at the names here, and so forth. All right. Mark Asbury, thank you for that. We'll keep in communication. Thank you, my brother. Petros, Shabbat Shalom, Hallelujah. Looking at it, what it says there, and everyone else who participated and who was in this, the support and the help is definitely appreciated. We're going to close out now, brothers and sisters, and giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. This is going on, say, about 3 hours, and we are going to, brothers and sisters, again, close out in this matter. Shalom.